absolutely stunningly beautiful. And so hopefully you're enjoying some of the beautiful weather that's out there. And yet at the same time, I know we're all ready to get on with spring too, for that matter. And with that being said, we have joining us today on the Kim Hammer Show, Senator John Boozman. Intent was to be in studio. However, weather kind of changed those plans a little bit. So, Senator Boozman, thank you for taking time out for calling in to the Kim Hammer Show today.
Hey Kim, thank you for having me as always. And you're right, I'm ready for spring too. But all of this makes us appreciate it that much more.
That is correct. So, what's the weather like up in? I guess you're up in Northwest Arkansas this weekend.
No, I was planning on flying home. I was going to be in Hot Springs and Central Arkansas, different parts of the state. But the weather was so bad there that the airports were closed, and trying to go through Dallas and Chicago to get there. So I couldn't get in. So I'm in Washington. It's 31. It's wind's blowing pretty good. It's the wind chill, I think, is 21. So it's cold here also.
I'm glad you're there and not me, Senator, just to be honest with you. I don't know how you
Well,
guys do
I,
what you do, to be honest
I
with you.
wish I was with you and around some normal people. That's always a good thing. And I'm blessed I get to come home almost every weekend. Occasionally you'll have some things like this. And then, as you know, you get into various pieces of legislation where you need to stay over. But it is a blessing to be able to come home essentially every weekend.
We're going to get into some subject matters here in a little bit, but let me just ask you this. How long have you been in D.C.?
Well, I was elected to the House representing the 3rd District. I won a special election at the end of 2001 and was in the House for 9 years. And then this is my 11th year in the Senate.
How have you kept your sanity working around some of the individuals that you have to work up there? And I, some people may laugh, but reality is, I don't know how you keep from going crazy working in the Washington, D.C. environment, or even how do you keep from losing values and principles knowing what you're surrounded with every day up there?
Well, I think the values and principles, again, there's all kinds of people from Arkansas up here during the week visiting, talking about various issues, and I think the sheriffs are going to be up here this week. You name it. The list just goes on. Lots of veterans groups, lots of healthcare groups, all kinds of business groups. So the other thing too, as I mentioned, I'm usually here Monday through Thursday. Get home Thursday night, and then we'll do things on Friday and Saturday. So, believe me, the Arkansas is a small state. We all know each other, and nobody's bashful about grabbing by the lapels when I'm home and saying, "John, straighten up. What are you doing here? What are you doing there?" That's all a good thing. I think that's how you keep it all together.
Let's get into some issues of the day, some things that are in the news. First of all, COVID-19 continues to be a problem that that President Biden pledged to, quote, crush, and he declared success over the virus in a July 14th speech. The reality is he dragged his feet and didn't provide Americans with resources like testing and masks. They're just now coming online. And then, of course, you got the booster shot, situation. What is your response to President Biden's handling of the COVID-19 situation?
Well, I think the problem was he really didn't handle it. He came into office when he was sworn in. We were doing about 1 million vaccines a day. President Trump did a good job of pushing the vaccine forward in the sense of developing it. And so President Biden came into office, really didn't do much of anything. They passed this sweeping $1.9 trillion bill that supposedly had all of this money for testing and this and that, $50 billion, if you can imagine, and nothing was done with it. And so we have the Omicron occur, which is so infectious, needing the testing materials, but they've never been distributed, never been bought. So that was a real problem. The other thing that he did that I think really exacerbated things, hurt the economy, and just really was a terrible decision is when they made the decision. OSHA decided that they were going to make anybody that had over 100 employees, become vaccinated. That was just a terrible overreach, unconstitutional. The good news is the courts that we worked so hard to put into place, people that would actually interpret the law as it was written, as opposed to making law, the courts have said, no, you can't do this. So that's a good thing. That's something that we can be very proud of. The idea that this little agency, OSHA, which has tremendous influence, has a lot of authority. But again, this is a group of unelected bureaucrats that aren't accountable to much of anybody. The idea that they can make a decision like this is simply absolutely crazy. So we pushed back, and I think I've done a really good job of getting that done. But it was just a needless thing that made people's lives very uncomfortable. And like I say, it's good that we fought back and got that under control.
So let me ask you, when it comes to agencies like OSHA, IRS, now they're wanting to do the facial imaging before you can even access your account. All these agencies seem to be running rogue. You got the Department of Justice that seems like they pick and choose who they really want to go after, and it's, in my opinion, not necessarily driven by trying to find who's guilty as much as it is picking and choosing who they want to find guilty or find innocent. You throw in there the January 6th, for lack of a better term, called insurrection. And I'm not saying, I'm not taking sides one way or the other on that deal. I'm just saying that it seems like all these agencies, as you just mentioned, are accountable to nobody. So who is it that they are accountable to? And how does a senator or a House member, especially if you're a House member in the minority or you're a senator in a tied chamber, how is it or what is it that can be done to bring these agencies under control? Or is it going to be until we get a president that has the will to get it straightened out? We're just going to have to wait till that happens.
Well, I think a couple of things. First of all, the people that have authority over them are the executive branch, the president, who's doing a very poor job of doing just that. The other thing that has accountability over them is the judicial branch, and they are reining them in with a lot of the judges that we put in place in the last Congress, again, that are working hard to interpret the law as it was written versus how they want it to be. And then finally, Congress. So we don't have to wait for a new president. I think there's an excellent chance that we'll gain control of the House. I think there's really a very, very good chance that we gain control of the Senate also. But when you've got one branch, then you can start bringing these people in. And you know this very well. You have hearings, you swear these people in, they're under oath. And as a result, you can really shine the light of day on what's going on. This facial recognition, we've got all of this stuff, all of this technology that is advancing in front of actual legislating. We've got to rein that kind of thing in. They're doing that, and really there's really no legislative authority one way or the other. But I'm like you, I have real concerns about giving up significant information like that to the IRS. And they've shown in the past that they're capable of misusing information. The other thing that they're not very good at is protecting the information that they have. When you centralize facial recognition, when you centralize all of these different things, then they are subject to foreign countries, the Chinese, the Russians, these rogue entities out there that are very smart that can hack into our systems. And so that's another reason that you don't do these things. In fact, the biggest thing that was going to be, and this was the Democratic Congress that was trying to get it in. If you remember, Kim, they were trying to do a deal where in this Build Back Broke, Build Back Better, Build Back Broke, whatever you want to call it, they were trying to institute a situation where after you had $600 worth of activity in your checking account, then all of the information at that point would go to the IRS. They raised it to $10,000, which again is negligible in the sense. I think the average family has about $62,000 worth of transactions that go on. So, it's just a good example of what the authority that they would like to give them. But I think we're doing a pretty good job of pushing back and preventing some of that stuff from happening. And when we gain control of Congress, it'll be easier to do.
One thing I've noticed, some of the Democrats have broke rank with their own party on key issues. I think the infrastructure bill, a couple things that they have broke rank. And obviously, I would think that you would be encouraged by that. But also at the same time, did that come with any encouragement or persuasion on the part of the Republicans up there, or was it just they started to see the light and realize that the liberal Democrat Party has just gone rogue and gone off the rail?
I think a little bit of seeing the light, but a lot of Republicans pushing back, and then again through Republican leadership talking about these things. I've talked to probably every farm group in America in the last several months, talking about they were going to do another thing where they eliminated what we call stepped-up basis with inheritance. Right now, if somebody dies, then the basis of your inheritance, the cost valuation, is the time of death. What they wanted to do is go back to the time that the property was bought, the equipment was bought, and then charge you capital gains on that. I think the average throughout the country, it would have cost farmers $720,000. Small business would be in the same. Well, the good news is they're talking to the farm community, explaining to them. I also asked Texas A&M to do a study. It's one thing if I say it. It's another thing if the foremost institution on ag economics says, hey, this is a huge problem. As a result, we got every farm group in America, including the most liberal, to say, no, you're not going down that path. So a big part of this is shows like yours, all of the different talk shows, that are going on in Arkansas throughout the country, talking about these issues, Republicans talking about them, explaining, and then the public really they're aware now. Most people are just, they're working hard to take care of their families. They kind of trust things to be okay, but they've got this gut feeling now that it's not okay. And I think that's where you get this very, very low, historically low approval of President Biden. He's down in territory that, is essentially goes back to even worse than the Jimmy Carter days.
Yeah, I don't think he's in the basement. I think he's in the. I think he's where the Bisqueen below the basement is. But
he's at the bottom of the barrel and working his way down.
Yeah, where the sewer lines are. But anyway, maybe that's where it needs to be. But
which is a good thing. Like I said, that's the public.
Yeah,
and that's where you got the results we got in Virginia, where people said, no, we're not going to take this.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Republicans have to be careful in the sense, they're not necessarily voting for Republicans. They're voting against what's going on now. And so we've got to fill that void. We've got to fix these problems. And then the biggest one was New Jersey. That's a bluer state than Arkansas is red, if you can imagine. And they just said no, and the governor won, but a lot of the local races went Republican that hadn't done that in decades and decades. But it was all about pushing back and saying, no, this is a path that the country's going down that we don't like. It's socialist, it's leftist, and enough's enough.
I'd rather have having the governor would have been nice, but having the bedrock institutions from which future leaders are going to evolve is great. Just working at the local level and then building it up. I do tell me what you think about this. I think you hit on a second ago. The one thing Republicans don't need to do is look at states like that and say just because they voted against their own doesn't necessarily mean that they're voting for Republicans. And what we have to do while we have this window of opportunity is appeal to them to show them and continue to convince them that when you look at cities like Little Rock, you look at cities like Detroit, Little Rock, you go out west, into California, up the West Coast, you look at New York. Crying out loud, New York just before we started the show today. The mayor out there, the new mayor, is now mandating that every Friday is going to be vegan menu only in the school system. There is no sanity within that party. And what I think we just need to be careful of is let's not take it as the ultimate victory, but it is moving it in the right direction. We just have to continue to push.
No, I agree. And that's absolutely crazy. Now I have great respect for people that feel like they don't need to eat meat and things like that. That's their business. If they want to do that, that's fine. I'm just the opposite, I think, in the sense of, chowing down on, I'm more in the quantity than quality. So, chowing down on whatever, but, exposing children to healthy food is fine. I would argue that certainly meats are very healthy, but, just feeling like you've got the authority to tell everybody in that community that on a given day you're not going to eat a certain thing is just absolutely crazy. This is what's driving parents absolutely bonkers in the situation of having perceived control like that. So we're getting good pushback, and that's something that I'm on the Ag Committee that goes. All of the school nutrition programs go through that. That's something that we're going to take a look at and see, in the sense that the federal government pays for a lot of that stuff, exactly what's going on and how we can be helpful in pushing back.
Yeah, and I'm not opposed to vegetarians. You want to eat vegetarian, that is perfectly fine. Okay. What I'm against is a school that is publicly funded by taxpayer dollars
you're
and
exactly
a mayor, not the school, not the superintendent, not the school board, not the parents, but the mayor says, we're going to do this on Friday. That is socialism at its best example. But you live in New York, you get what you deserve. So anyway, hey, let's shift.
You're right. And again, that stuff is so. I was on the school board for 7 years, and I got on it because we had a great school system. I just wanted to do my best, to do my part, to be helpful in that regard. But those decisions, if the people of a community, want to vote and do that, that's fine. But the idea that a mayor has that authority, as you point out, is absolutely crazy.
So you mentioned it a second ago. Let's segue into if you're elected, you're at the top of the committee list for the Ag Committee. Is that correct?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. Relate what that means to Arkansas, you being the chair of Senate Ag. How does that translate down into real stuff happening in Arkansas?
Well, agriculture is so important for Arkansas. It's 25% of the economy. But if you get outside of any town of any size, it's probably 85 or 90%. We've lost so much of our manufacturing now, in our smaller communities. Agriculture is what drives it. And it's not only, it's agriculture, and then it's just rural America, which the agriculture community and committee has such a big deal with. So it's rural schools, giving them support they need. It's medicine. It's making sure that broadband gets to these areas, and the list goes on and on. All of the things are important, that we have a healthy rural America. And right now it's struggling. And we're in a situation in Arkansas, well over half of our counties lost population. Mm-hmm. And so, you start losing those turnback dollars, and it makes it that much more difficult. So we're going to be working really hard to do all we can to support rural America. And that's really what it's all about. That's what agriculture is all about. And we have the cheapest, safest food supply of any nation in the world. We can be very, very proud. That doesn't just happen. That's the agriculture community that does a tremendous job of, providing that not only for our country, but for the world. 40% of the agriculture products produced in Arkansas are exported, and agriculture is a real bright spot when you look at trade. This is something that we have we're not importing our food to any length, any measurement concerning our exports. In other words, we've got a big favorable balance of trade in that regard. That's something we want to protect and is one of the bright spots in our economy.
All right, let me queue up the question, and we're going to take a break, and we'll come back and pick up with this question when we come back. You mentioned about the balance of trade. China is dependent upon us, or we're dependent upon China, depending on how you want to look at it, as far as our shipment of rice out of Arkansas and other things. China is positioning itself either through economic power or through other means. I think through the COVID virus, we have certainly realized how dependent we are upon China to, in my opinion, a negative fault with regards to the amount of medicines, the amount of, things that we need that we have become so dependent upon China on. How do you go about, and here's the question, we'll come back after the break, how do you go about balancing keeping China in line, knowing that we are so heavily dependent upon them for things that we export, but also things that we import, especially when it would come to how it would impact Arkansas, say like with the rice that we ship out of here that goes to China and to other countries. I want you to think about that. You're listening to The Kim Hammer Show. If you want to, you can go up to www.thekimhammershow.com, and you can see other articles that I put up that I think you will find of interest, number one. Number two, you can go up to the shows from the past that you want to re-listen to, and also talk to the young man that's helping me as far as push out my show's audience or get a bigger audience. And in the next week or two, we're going to go like to 12 different platforms. Don't ask me about it because I'll tell you when it's ready to go, but he knows all about that stuff, and there are things out there I didn't even know existed. But to push out our audience in order to make sure Arkansans can stay informed with regards to the content that's here on the Kim Hammer Show. Our guest today is Senator John Boozman, calling in all the way from Washington, D.C. Appreciate Senator Boozman taking time out to be on the Kim Hammer Show, and we'll pick up on that question when we come back after the break.
Hi, friends. This is Katie Pavlich from townhall.com. The liberal media and big tech are working overtime to promote the left's anti-American agenda and silence me and the reporters on our team at Town Hall. We have to bring the truth to the American people, free from the spin of big media and the censorship of those big tech companies. We're constantly covering the news that matters, exposing the COVID lies, the leftist rot and crime surge in our cities, the illegal alien crisis at our southern border, and all of Joe Biden's unconstitutional overreach, including the critical race theory attacks on our children and grandchildren by school boards and the Department of Justice. I hope you'll support our vital team of conservative journalists today. You can do so by going to townhallaction.com. While cancel culture and big tech comes for us, the direct support of our VIP members helps make us uncancelable. Please join our team by becoming a VIP member at townhallaction.com. That's townhallaction.com.
Hi, this is Pat Davis, your healthplanman.com. Our plans are saving small businesses $20,000 a year and more in annual premiums. We only have a deductible if you're hospitalized and no copays for anything outpatient, including surgery. We're finding that small businesses want to offer health insurance to their employees, but it's just not affordable in most cases. About the only way it seems is to offer super high deductible plans with lots of copays. Share plans offer no tax write-off and are not actual insurance. One great plan option is to keep your current health plan, raise the deductible, which lowers your premium, and then add what we call our deductible buster. It pays the deductible and even copays when you or your employees get medical care. Best of all, your premiums will be the same or less than you're paying, and you don't even change plans. You really need to look at this if you're a small business owner, or if you don't own a business and you just feel like there's got to be a better way. Please call or text 501-605-6935, yourhealthplanman.com, 501-605-6935.
I sure would like to send my child to Central Arkansas Christian or maybe a Villa Christian school.
I'd like my child to go to Bingham Road Baptist Church Academy or Cornerstone Montessori Christian School, but I'm just not sure I can afford it.
I've got good news for both of you. We have half-price scholarships available now for each school you just mentioned. And in addition to a half-price scholarship, we also have easy monthly payments available to help you afford the remaining investment in your child's education. But we only have a limited number of these scholarships available, so call now for more information. Call us during normal business hours at 501-404-6545 and we'll guide you through the simple steps to take you on the way to a better education for your child. Half-price tuition, easy monthly payments, a great education. Call now, 501-404-6545. Call during business hours, 501-404-6545.
Welcome back to the Kim Hammer Show here on 101.1 FM The Answer. If you'd like to go up and listen to the show again, you can go up to the website, thekimhammershow.com. And sometime this week, we should have all the information about the platforms that you'll also be able to go listen to other than, and we're trying to be diversified, you know, with the with big tech the way it is today. You never know when one of them will pull your plug. So you got to kind of spread out across the board and be positioned and ready to go. And we'll get all that information out to you, or you can go up to the website and just stay in tune through the website, which also has some really good articles from conservative positions or things that I think you might want to know, especially relevant to what's going on here in the state of Arkansas, whether it's the interstate system getting shut down for all the construction that's going on, or things that are going on within the medical field and things that are going on at the Capitol. It's a good source to go to just to stay connected with all things relevant to Arkansas. Speaking of which, pick back up on the question. Got Senator John Boozman calling in from Washington. Thanks for being on the Kim Hammer Show today, Senator. And the question was, with China and us being so dependent upon them, and them sometimes just like, you know, thumb of their nose at us. And I can't believe that they're not sitting back and they've got a master plan, a master strategy for how they plan on hurting us as a nation. And here we are as Arkansas. We're pretty heavily dependent upon them for exports, you know, specifically like in areas of rice. What can you give us as far as reassurance or insight with regards how we're handling China and especially being so dependent upon them for the products that they produce?
No, this is one of the biggest challenges that we face as a nation, and certainly as a national security issue. Congratulations on your diversifying your platforms. That's great. You're going to be able to reach more people, and that's a very, very good thing. But you're wise also in diversifying because, as you mentioned, if one platform goes down and, you know, or the plug is pulled or whatever, then you've got the ability to lean on others. Right now, we are so dependent on China for so many things. We need to do the same thing. We need to diversify. And the good news is the government is understands this now. And then also our individual businesses. And you're right, we are very dependent on China for exports, whether it's rice or soybeans or cotton. You know, the list goes on and on with China. So because of that, they're working hard. I'm working hard with them to try and find new markets in the rest of the world so we won't be as dependent. And that's true really for so many different products. We just didn't realize until the pandemic how dependent we were for our medicines, as you mentioned earlier in the last segment, our protective gear, but chips from Taiwan. We're having a situation now where we have a new car inventory very, very low. Again, that's because we can't get the chips that we need. So we passed a bill in the Senate regarding this. We passed one in the House this last week. And so those two will be conference married together, working on that really as we speak right now. That's a good thing. So we've got to diversify. The other problem is we've got this huge problem with shipping, both on the East and the West Coast, our ports. It turns out that all of the carriers are foreign-owned. In other words, all the ships that bring products in and out are foreign-owned. So we've got a lot of challenges, lots of opportunities that we need to take care of. But the good news is that I think that we are identifying that as a nation, and that Congress, really at every level now, is, including the executive branch, is understanding that this is a problem, and we can do some things about it. I'm excited about rural America regarding agriculture in the sense that one of the problems we've got is, you know, we produce things that are taken from that county, taken from the state, someplace else. They're value added into textiles or furniture or whatever. What we're seeing now is that with automation being what it is now, you can compete with anybody. That's why Mississippi County has become the biggest steel-producing county in the nation, with the most modern plants in the world. So we can do this, and we're working with a lot of people to try and I know you're doing the same thing, to try and get investment in the state so that we can value add the things that we have now, and then again be less dependent on places like China.
The one thing about being balanced with China is if you start flexing your muscle, they start flexing their muscle. So diplomacy, is key in order to keep us out of a war. Just put it point blank, or keep us out of a trade war, one or the other. And I know that there is a company that escapes my mind, you might know, that is going to start manufacturing chips here in the United States.
Yes.
What is there that is being done? What is there that can be done at the national level or even at the state level, if you want to pass down some wisdom, to where we could identify the things that we're most dependent upon in China and bring them back? Of course, China uses a labor force that is not comparable to ours as far as,
Right.
And that's an unfair trading advantage.
Right.
But yet at the same time, what if you had to put the things on the top of the list that you think we need to get away from China as far as being so heavily dependent upon and start manufacturing here in America or find an alternate source, another country? What would those things be, and how aggressive is Congress in trying to bring industry back to America so we can be less dependent upon foreign countries like China?
Well, I think both at the federal level and the state level, we can incentivize manufacturing, and we simply have to do that. You mentioned the chips. I mentioned the chips also, about how important that is about, and we are starting to diversify in that area, bringing that home. Rare earth minerals are a big deal, and it's interesting. Arkansas has a bunch of rare earth minerals in our state. The thing that will balance out, I believe, I think we have a great opportunity is with artificial intelligence and automation. Is you're right, the labor issue has been where the imbalance has been in the past. But with automation, I think you can balance that out where we can compete. So it's a matter of putting the investment in place. Big companies, the Walmarts of the world, groups like that, they're understanding that they're very, very dependent on the supply from places like China. They're trying to diversify and look for places in America. Mexico would be another place in the sense that it's much more stable. They're much friendlier. Certainly, they are a friend as opposed to China. The Chinese lie, they cheat, they steal, and they manipulate. Not the Chinese people, but the Chinese government. And that's not, that's just telling the truth. So President Trump did a really good job of playing ball with them. Their Achilles heel is that they've got so many people. They need about a 6% plus, 6 to 8% growth to stay even, because they need to create 20, 25 million jobs a year, for their people as the country grows. So as a result, when he got very, very tough regarding trade, he really had a huge impact on their economy. Theirs is dependent, probably more dependent on us buying their products, than we are in getting them. It's a mutual thing. So I hope we can, work it out where both of ours advantage. Trade is so important. When we look at the products that we make in the United States, you have to look basically saying, we've got 20 customers here, and 1,000 someplace else in the world. And, that's something that we can do. And we want that wealth coming into our country as opposed to going out to the other places throughout the world.
All right. So you hit on this a while ago. Let me bring this subject up. But, you can have all the goods that you need, but if you can't get them off the ship and get them on the trucks or the trains and get them to the store, at least in my lifetime, and I'm 63, Jimmy Carter era, lived through that time, all this other, lot of history there as far as times having lived through. I don't recall ever a supply chain issue like what we're having right now. And maybe I just have a bad memory, but historically, when it comes to the inflation, other than Jimmy Carter era, I heard somebody say the other day, Jimmy Carter is probably very thankful for Joe Biden. Maybe after 30, 40 years, they'll give him that label to remember him by. But, with the historical inflation that we're experiencing right now, the supply chain issues, what have you seen firsthand, or what do you know firsthand as far as the supply chain issues? They're saying it'll be the middle of next year, last I heard, before we can, see this thing level out. And that to me just seemed, it's already been too long to wait. That just seems like somebody didn't know what they're doing if we're going to have to wait that long.
Right. Well, I think the ports are in terrible shape. They're a little better than they were. We passed a law in the House that essentially gave the Maritime Commission more authority to enforce contracts, those kind of things, and then lots of other littler things to make it more efficient. Senator Thune introduced a bill in the Senate this last week that we're looking at. We actually helped him as he was crafting that. And so doing the same thing. So hopefully we'll have some legislation. The other thing, Kim, is we kind of have to rethink our on-time delivery. The United States was so efficient. Literally, when I was growing up, you had a bunch of warehouses and things were stored and this and that. Those don't exist anymore. The warehouses are the trucks on the road, and they're essentially just moving product as it's needed into the stores, and only the products that are needed are actually being produced. So we probably do need some warehouse capacity and just kind of rethink things. Labor is a huge issue. Right now, I'm dealing with, we're very concerned about our people that produce beef, our cowboys. They get a certain price. The spread between what they get and what it's selling in the store is tremendous. We'd like to balance that out. And the way you do that is you essentially slaughter more animals. You have more capacity, so more can be sold. And that will raise the price. But the problem is labor. Right now, our packers, and there's not very many of them, probably they're running at 80%. They could, if they had 20% more labor, if they could hire 20% more people, which they desperately need, that would make a big difference. And I don't care where you're at in Arkansas, whether it's the biggest community or the smallest community, labor is right at the top, supply chain, and they're entwined. A lot of our supply chain also has to do with the fact that we don't have as many people wanting to work as we need to.
Do you think that maybe if the Republicans can take back to Congress in November that some of the freebies, because my opinion, a lot of the reason people don't want to work, number one, it's a societal issue. People have just gotten lazy, and they've just gotten dependent upon the freebies that have been coming down. So do you anticipate that with the Republicans taking back control of the Congress, that there will be an effort to cut off some of the free money that's coming down, some of the subsidies that are coming down? Because honestly, some people have figured it out. They don't have to work as long as they can play the game and keep the system to their advantage.
Well, Kim, you do two things as a legislator, and you know this very well. You pass certain things that are desperately needed, and in this case, you prevent some really bad things from happening. And Build Back Broke, this massive $2 trillion bill. If you take the gimmicks out, the actual cost is over $4 trillion. But that was all about adding to these social programs with no thought as to how you're going to pay for it. So we were able to block that. Every Republican voted against it, and we were able to get, a couple Democrats on board. So that's a good thing. As we go into the next Congress, the thing that frustrates me is that, instead of worrying about, raising taxes and doing all of these things, we need to concentrate on the things we've talked about on the show today: labor, supply chain, getting manufacturing going in our country again. That's a national security issue. Those are the things we need to be concentrating on instead of the Build Back Broke, which for the last several months, that's all that was talked about and all that was tried to get done, although we managed to defeat it. So, yes, to answer your question, that's going to be the focus. These are the things that the American people want us to get accomplished, and the things that if we can get done, I think the economy is poised to just blow and go.
Okay. Couple other topics. We've got about 10 minutes, 12 minutes left. I want to make sure to get a couple other topics in. The crime rate is just through the roof. I mean, the big cities, or any city that seems to be held by Democrats especially, the crime rate is through the roof. You couldn't pay me enough to go to Chicago right now, by the way. If I got a Chicago listening audience, I probably just lost them. But you couldn't pay me to go to Chicago or some of these other cities where it is just, take New York, for example, what happened to the officers and the bitterness that is being shown, toward law enforcement or authority as a whole. 12 U.S. cities set homicide records last year. All 12 are run by Democrats. Far-left activists have pushed to the end cash bail and release criminals back onto the streets, many of which commit more crimes. What is your position, and what is it that you feel that you can do as a senator, or any senator can do, to help get this under control? Because when it's not safe to go out in the street, people aren't going to go out in the street, and that has a direct effect on economy, going to school, socializing, all the other things that we as Americans love to do. But if people get too afraid to go out on the streets and they start retreating to their homes, that's not the kind of America we want.
You're exactly right. Every study that's ever been done regarding what you have to have a successful community, one that's growing, a vibrant community, public safety is always number one. And so we don't have to go very far. If you look at the top 20 entities in crime, West Memphis will be there, Pine Bluff will be there, and Little Rock is there. So we as a state, we as a nation, you mentioned Chicago, Los Angeles, New York, the list goes on and on. But we simply have to focus on this and get it under control. And it's not about locking everybody up. It's bad schools, it's gangs, it's the breakdown of the family. The list goes on and on. And so we have to address all of those problems and give support to it all. On the other hand, if you have a situation where you're letting people out on bail that shouldn't be out, people that are committing violent crimes get out on bail and then commit another violent crime, then that to me is, it's government malpractice. We're supposed to protect people. And so we have to work with our judges, we have to work with our prosecutors, the police. And I was with the FBI a week or so ago. I was in Little Rock. I've met with our prosecutors, trying to see what we can do at a federal level to bring more resources and make sure that the federal component, DEA, FBI, all of those entities are working well with the locals, so that we can get a handle on this.
The border crisis. I mean, some of what we're dealing with, I think, could have a direct correlation. Especially, you talk about Mexico and diversifying everything. They certainly know how to produce drugs in Mexico, because a lot of it's coming across the border, none of it legal. But the border crisis, Biden insisted he had gotten control of the crisis, while Kamala Harris, his border czar, claimed that they had made progress. President Biden's presidency has been marked by month after month of shocking level of illegal immigrants encountering at the southern border. We know that some states are starting to put these individuals on buses and, ship them up there to D.C. and, put them on the back door where the problem originates from. His policies and what you see happening, being in the trenches up there, do you give us any hope that is going to change. I watched a video the other day of where the border agents down there basically told their superiors when they came in to give them a rah-rah speech what they could do with it. And it seems like there's a breakdown in the morale among those that are on the front line. You throw the FBI on there, and, if we're going to get crime under control, we're bringing the FBI in. There's a real level of distrust given things that you see happening among our federal law enforcement agencies. So what ray of hope can you give us that there's going to be any change in the border crisis situation, given how President Biden is handling it and those agencies directly accountable to him?
Right. I'm very familiar with this. I was a couple Congresses ago. I was the chair of the Homeland Security Appropriations Subcommittee, and so I was at the border on several occasions. Visiting with the Border Patrol, going to their training centers, the whole bit. These are wonderful men and women that they don't do a good job. They do a tremendous job. They're working so hard. And they're tasked now with all kinds of stuff, babysitting, this and that. And that's why the morale is absolutely terrible on their part, because they're not allowed to do the job that they're supposed to be doing. President Trump did a very, very good job constructing the wall, going forward with that, and then also making it such that he worked with the Mexican government so that the people that were going to seek asylum, which is all you have to do is say you're afraid and a few other words, and then you get put into the court system, and it takes forever. And in the old days, and you could stay in the United States as that worked its way out. Now, well, President Trump's worked with the Mexican government, and they worked out a program to stay in Mexico. President Biden's tried to get rid of that. The courts have stepped in. They are a ray of hope in the sense that they don't have the legal authority to do what they've been doing. And Congress is pushing back. Republicans are pushing back. The public is pushing back. And so when we take over the House, again, I think there's an excellent chance we're going to take over the Senate. Then you start having the hearings, you start passing legislation to hold these people accountable. It's so important. It doesn't matter. Immigration is such an important issue. And when we think of immigration, we always have to remember the United States naturalizes 1 million people a year, more than the rest of the world does put together.
Legally.
There's people waiting in line, legally, waiting in line 5-10 years. And the people that are most adamant that the border needs to be controlled and that things need to be done right are the people that have gone through that process. So, we simply have to get it done. It's a national security issue now because people are coming from all over the world. Used to it was primarily Mexico and Central America, but now people are turning out from the Middle East and you name it, and they're there. So it's something that we simply have to focus on.
Big tech.
I wish we could convince President Biden that it was that important, but so far it's been a challenge, and Vice President Harris is just
incompetent. She's just incompetent. You won't call it what it is. She's incompetent, but
I would call it that, and again, just missing in action too.
Yeah.
So.
Big tech. Let's talk about them for a second. It's a balancing power between free market and not interfering with these companies that have built these huge platforms. I mentioned a while ago about being diversified because on any given day they could pull the rug out from underneath you. And as conservative Republicans trying to focus on a free market, but also dealing with the nature of a woke industry, cancel culture. And I'm just going to call it, bias, unfavorable treatment, depending on what your political platform is or what your political tone is. They pick and choose who they want to drop out. Where do you get involved as far as saying, enough is enough. You've built this monster, and now you're beginning to censor people and to, kick people off, let certain people stay on. How in the world do you wrestle with that, and how do you bring that under control from your perspective?
Well, I think if we were having this discussion 10 years ago, Kim, I'd say, hey, they're in their infancy, they're growing and this and that, and we'll work it out. But here it is 10 years later, and they are so dominant, so big, and such a big part of society. I think I've reached the conclusion that they need to be broken up. Now, the question is, how do you do that? And so this is one area where Democrats and Republicans are coming to agreement on that they need to be regulated. And so we're working hard in a bipartisan fashion. I think this is a good story, and trying to figure out exactly what you're alluding to, Republican principles, free enterprise and all that. But it's not free enterprise when you're so dominant. And, essentially a very, very small handful of individuals are controlling that. And the more we hear about it, the number of dollars, the manipulation that they did regarding the last election as far as putting forward their favorites, this is a big deal. And so because of that, I think they definitely need some regulation. And I think that is becoming the consensus in Congress, which is a good thing.
Okay. I've got like 2 minutes left. I'd like to talk to you about Supreme Court. I'd like to talk to you about federal elections and them trying to take over the federal elections. President's got State of the Union coming up in a couple of weeks. And, you got 2 minutes. What do you want to hear the president say in a State of Union address? And then take about 30, 45 seconds, talk about your veterans effort. I know that's dear to your heart.
Well, sadly, I don't think we're going to hear a lot that I want to hear at the State of the Union. The president is coming forward with a lot of stuff that simply is out of touch with mainstream America. American is center left, center right, middle. The stuff that they're coming up with is about as far left as you can get. So because of that, we're just disagreeing and fighting back and preventing a lot of this craziness from getting done. Regarding veterans, we have to take care of them. We had a big victory on Capitol Hill this last week. We were able to pass out of committee a bill that myself and several others have been working on regarding people that were deployed to the Middle East and were exposed to burn pits, increased cancer rates. So we're going to get them covered, and things like that are very bipartisan. And as you know, Kim, that's really what it's all about is taking care of things like that directly affect people that are so very important.
Okay. You've been listening to the Kim Hammer Show here today on 101.1 FM The Answer. You can go up to my website, which is the www.thekimhammershow.com to hear this program replayed. As I've mentioned before, hopefully this week we'll start coming out with our new platforms, blog and all those other things that I hire a guy to take care of that I don't know. I just, hire somebody to do it. So hopefully it'll get done right, But Senator Boozman, I appreciate you taking time out to be on the Kim Hammer Show. I'd love to get you back on.
101.1 FM, The Answer. KDXE FM, Kamak Village, Little Rock. A Salem Media Group station. 101.1 FM, The Answer.